The Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, here for a little Wednesday Q&A. And if you're wondering about the difference, perhaps, in mic sound as compared to previous days, previous weeks, either being in the studio or being down in the dungeon, I am on location, and I am using using a Cloud 2, a Kingston HyperX Cloud 2 headset right now. And I gotta say, other than the fact that I can't when it's... Alright, so I really like this headset, and actually I think the sound is really good, especially for what it is, for being a headset, as compared to normally I'm using the Blue Yeti, generally, actually, when I'm on location, and of course in the studio, it's a whole, very professional setup, of course, by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy. But this headset is... The only flaw I have with it is that for some reason I can't get... I can't get any monitoring sound out, meaning that, they're kind of noise canceling, so I actually really, I can barely kind of hear myself, and I'm not hearing myself in the headphones. So I'm not sure what exactly the nature of that is, but I'm working on that. But anyway, the microphone on these just sound phenomenal, so I'm rocking with them, and they're so portable. I mean, it makes my life, frankly, a lot easier to just use it this way. So anyway, but you didn't hear me, or you didn't come here to hear me talk about my headset. But I will say it's a damn fine, pair of cans. I mean, just fantastic. And one of these days, I'm going to tell everybody how to... When you go up to a soda machine, a lot of people don't know this, but usually you have the codes, like you type in B6 to get a Sprite, or you type in, D7 to get a Diet Coke or something like this, right? A lot of people don't know that all of those, that actually functions as the diagnostic panel for the entire machine. And one of these days I'm going to tell you guys how you can get free sodas out of those. I don't do that normally, but I'm just saying that there's a way to do that. In fact, even if it's not B7 or D or D8 or whatever, if it doesn't have the digits, if it just has a picture of the different sodas on it, you can actually, there's a sequence that you can punch in, and then each of those buttons that represents a soda actually works like a arrow directional, that allows you to flip through the menu. And of course, it's just a very small menu that exists on the little LED screen. For the soda machine. But yeah, maybe we'll cover that sometime if you want to know how to really, if you want to screw with the Koch brothers. This is how you can do it. You can get their sodas for free. Or maybe you can help out. I mean, I've done it before, and I just helped out like a hotel or something, with their busted machine. It's like, oh, here, please allow me. I'll get this fixed for you. But that's what I get for working at various tech companies. Anyway, you could probably Google it, and I'm sure it would come up. But most people don't know you could do that. But that's also not what we're here to talk about. What I do want to open up with, there's a couple things I want to open up with before we get into the questions. One of them is, I heard about a website, and actually how I heard about this was on This Week in Tech, which is one of the... I've really whittled down the amount of podcasts I listen to, but This Week in Tech is, while I don't always listen to it right away, it is one where even if I end up getting a backlog of them, I will listen to every one. Because usually it does two things. This Week in Tech, it gives me a great pulse on what a lot of insiders think. And you're more... Not that I'm totally consumer facing, but certainly you're more run-of-the-mill consumer facing, like kind of tech journalists think and all this. So it's a great way to keep an eye on things, so I listen to it for that. And the commentary's great, and I've just, I've been a fan of Leo Laporte for as long as I can remember. So it's just part and parcel. Anyway, I was listening to this week's episode, and they had Becky Worley on, and they had Mike Elgin, who Mike Elgin has been a guest on Sovereign Tech in the past. And he's, just one of the greatest tech journalists, in my opinion, in history. And he's still, amazingly, he's still so on top. I've been reading him about as long as I've been reading John C. Dvorak, who is certainly a personal hero. And anyway, they were on the show, and they ended up just kind of offhand. Becky Worley, who's known for being on Good Morning America, and she used to be a producer for the Screensavers back in the old Tech TV days. Becky Worley was talking about this website, FamilyTreeNow.com. And we'll go into this, and then I got another thing I want to talk about quick. But this website is effectively kind of like Ancestry.com, but there's a couple caveats. One is the biggest difference between Ancestry.com. So it's supposed to be like a genealogy website. Personally, I almost have a hard time believing that that's what this is really about. Even though when you get down to it, eventually there is a premium product that you can purchase, but it's largely free. And here's the thing: is that like it is creepy just how much information about you exists on this website. I looked me up. I was on there along with, like tons and tons. I mean, I come from a huge Jewish family, and like everybody's there. All the places I've lived, or almost all the places I've lived, were listed on there, from Yorkville to Ocala to, I mean, like all over the place. I was really like, I was like, holy shit. Now, is this all kind of public information? Well, yes, a lot of it can be had publicly. The thing is that this is such a simple database that you just go to, you type in a name, and you fucking get it all. And it's not like Ancestry.com where you actually, you pay a price to usually access that amount of information. So there's really no barriers. There's not even really any complexity involved, and you can just get tons of information about people. So I found that to be pretty concerning. And it varies, depends on how much people have on you and whatnot. I mean, there's some people that some clients that I had looked into it for, and some of them, maybe it mentioned who their mom and dad was and a couple places they've lived, and others, it read like, it might as well be a CIA dossier on somebody. I mean, it was that good. And in fact, there's not a lot of clarity with this website. So again, it's familytreenow.com. There's not a lot of clarity, frankly, as to like where they really are getting this information. You could say it's all public records, but somehow you don't know that that's all that they're getting it through. So I feel like the site's pretty nefarious. You can opt out of it. It doesn't matter if you made an account on it or not. You're in it. Okay? And again, the big problem is that unlike other services of this sort, there isn't a paywall, or it's not like a government site where maybe you'd have a degree of legal recourse of some kind. This is, yeah, I don't like it. I don't dig it. There is a link in the show notes for this episode. I'm also going to be talking about it on episode 209 of Sovereign Tech, on a Prime episode. Just recommending people get yourself deleted from this. And you can say, well, is deleting yourself from it, is that kind of confirming that the information was correct? No, I don't see how you could come to that conclusion, because honestly, you could go through, find any name on there. I mean, you could delete it. You could, if you had the time, and the wherewithal, you could be deleting records from that nonstop. Now, of course, you're not stopping the CIA, NSA, AT&T, FBI, all the alphabet soup organizations of the government. Yes, AT&T is one of them. You're not going to keep anything from them, of course, but this is just kind of to stop, certain maybe, identity thieves or stalkers or, whoever. I mean, like the amount of information on there, you could easily you could perhaps, call up, like with that info, you could call up Verizon, you could call up an ISP or something, and you could probably port a number away from somebody and get access maybe to their two-factor authentication with that. We've talked about that in previous Q&As. Or you could, there's a bunch of things, you could do with it. You could do credit card theft with it. I mean, like it's a scary amount of information on people. I mean, and even, right down to maiden names, I mean, all this shit, and it's all up there. So now what's interesting, the other thing that's interesting about the site is how hard or how confusing, it's not really hard, but how confusing they've made it and how deeply they hid the ability to delete yourself from the site. Like I said, there will be a link in the show notes. It's actually to an article from Good Housekeeping, of all things, which is incredible. Like, I can't believe Good Housekeeping is doing this, but I guess this is definitely, in the metaphorical sense of the term, this is certainly good housekeeping, deleting this shit off the internet or off that website. And well, like, so how you do it is you have to go down and like you click this button called that says privacy, or you click a link that says privacy at the footer of the website, and then it gives you a bunch of like when you click on privacy, it gives you kind of their terms of service, right? And they barely let you see the font. Usually, when a default thing for say a link is for the text to be blue, right? Especially on a white page, for it to be like a bright blue. No, they hid the text where it says they made it look not too dissimilar from the rest of the word salad on the privacy segment of the site. They made where it says that you can click here to delete. They did that, and then you have to go and research for it. Like they kind of, I mean, it's not hard in comparison to some other sites, that you try to delete yourself from, but they're pretty sneaky about it. It's pretty clear they don't want you deleting yourself from it. I mean, and you can say it's a free service. Hey, maybe this would be some kind of great thing, but god damn it, there's just way too much information on there, for my taste. That's for sure. So I've been recommending. I shared it on social media and all that. The Good Housekeeping article in particular, so you can find it on my Twitter. If you want to just look for it there. But it is also in the show notes for this episode, and like I said, I will be talking about it on episode 209. So just a warning out there. I was not okay with the amount of information on it. In fact, when Becky Worley was talking about it on This Week in Tech, she said that she had, and you might think that this is a good thing, but take this to its logical conclusion of where else it could be used. She said that she looked up a guy who used to be a prior tenant of hers at one of her houses, and she found out that the guy lived 15 minutes away from her right now. And this was like 10 years ago, that this guy never paid her for, whatever the fuck he owed for, for staying at one of her properties. And she sicked the law on him, just this past week because of using this website. So I mean, this is the degree that this could certainly be used, is that she was able to find this guy, and she found out he lived pretty much right down, like not far away at all, effectively. I mean, I guess 15 minutes isn't down the street, but you get what I'm saying. So, but figure how else could that be used? I mean, that's a real concern, especially like. Well, I could think of a few different reasons why you wouldn't want somebody to be able to, to triangulate you like that. I mean, and there's other sites too. I know there's like Spokeo. There's a whole bunch that do this sort of thing. But FamilyTreeNow.com, that's the one I am warning you about. And I just recommend delete it. Yeah, is it going to stop the NSA? No. But what is? Not a whole lot. But if it stops, run-of-the-mill people from doing this shit, because this site is definitely made for run-of-the-mill, hey, good. Reclaim some privacy wherever you can, whenever you can. All right. So the second thing that I wanted to bring up before I get into a couple of the questions here, we're going to try and get to 3 of them. And I do want to say quick, I did say that this week was going to be a Q&A show that's actually not going to be tech related, but all religious questions. I'm actually going to save that. I might save that for 2 weeks from now. And then we'll, and I'll do all of that there, because I got a ton of questions. I still got more questions about the Holocene calendar, and I got questions about about that special I did for Patreon, where it was the hidden history of Christmas, that a lot of people wondered, had some religious questions about, which I think would be interesting to do, as well as the question about the Aleph, which we've got to get into. So I'm just gonna back that up a little bit, and since I'm on location anyway, like we'll stick with not easier questions, but just we'll stick with the tech questions for right now, and then we'll do that show with that set theme. Kind of religion and history. We'll do that maybe next week or perhaps the week after. So okay, let's get the second subject I just wanted to mention to you quickly is Patreon. Which, boy, kudos to Patreon. They just keep adding in features. They are nonstop action. I love it. They have added in the ability to do polling on on a Patreon page. So I might start doing these, and I implore you. You don't have to. But I implore you to contribute your thoughts, to these polls when I ask various polling questions. I'd love to know. This is something that's been very hard for me to kind of. I know there's some ways to do this that are kind of anonymous, but like I don't have, and I honestly, in many ways, I really don't want. Or at least I don't want your personal data, but I don't have any way to really collect data other than getting messages and emails from listeners. Sort of your thoughts on what's going on with the show, direction you'd like to see, different topics that you'd be interested in hearing about, things like this. And since, my Patreon subscribers, you're really like the core, you're the hardcore, Sovereign Tech listeners and contributors. You contribute to the show as well. You're not just listeners, you're very active. And so, I think your opinion, not that, necessarily other people's informed opinion, doesn't hold weight. And I want to be clear on that. I'm saying informed opinion. But yours definitely holds more weight for varying reasons. And so I want to get that from you. So I'm going to I'm going to start doing some of these polls. You don't have to contribute to it, but if you want to just click on something, or answer the question or whatever or the poll that I put up, I'd really appreciate it if you did. So that's something that's coming down, and there's going to be some other Patreon only content coming out. There will also be, like I said, I will be doing the live hangout. I will be doing that. That's probably going to be the first week of February that we will be doing that. And that link, how I'm going to do that is that the link for the hangout I am going to share on Patreon only. So you'll get an email notification if you get email notifications from Patreon, which if you're a patron, you should. You'll at least get an email notification, or if you have the Patreon app, it'll come up with a notification on that, and you will I'll make it a full post, and that will give you the link to be able to join in on the Hangout. Now I'm going to be running the Hangout completely on my own. A lot of people that run Hangouts actually have like sound engineers and people that are controlling things in the back end. Even if you don't see them, they actually hide themselves from the broadcast, because you can do that. This will be all me, so I'll be asking that people be respectful and let each other talk kind of one at a time, or ask questions one at a time, or drop off as they're done. But I think that'll be a lot of fun. So we've got that coming up too. So okay, okay. Now you know what? I'm gonna one more quick subject, then I will break into a couple of the questions here. Just something weird I've noticed. And you can let me know if you're seeing something along these lines. Now, YouTube has a ton of problems, no doubt about it. I mean, I don't recommend ever relying on YouTube as kind of your business front end or your entrepreneurial front end. I know a lot of people do. But I noticed the other day so the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I, we were looking through and just having fun. We were just looking through some kind of, Mike Barra, Dark Mission, Secret History of NASA, Anunnaki. I mean, I don't really believe much of any of it, but just for giggles, I mean, YouTube has kind of become notorious for, the amount of, conspiracy style videos, and these, that it has on it, and these are of varying qualities, of course. Some of them are completely text based, and they're terrible, or it's like some, like dragon speaking or something, dragon naturally speaking, it's some software that's actually reading text, or sometimes it's a really, really well done independent documentary, or it's video from a conference or something, all of which are really interesting to watch, whether you agree with the person or not. But the weird thing is like, okay, so I'm kind of taking Stephanie through it, and I'm like, yeah, all right, let's look up this, let's look up this, and it was weird because all the interesting subjects that I wanted to see if there was some kind of talks on, or if there's some kind of like independent documentary on, a lot of them were strange names that now had like totally, like it didn't take me to anything related to the historical concept that I was, looking up. For example, like I'd look up Sargon the Great, okay, the Akkadian, kind of the ancient king, and it would come up with some, dipshit named Sargon of Akkad. I mean, maybe he's not a dipshit, maybe he's an intelligent guy, but like it came up with and that's all that came up. It's not until like I actually got on my PC and started looking things up, and it's like, okay, now I have to, you really had to hone down. I was trying to think of a couple other things. Like you type in Anunnaki, and it comes up with the game Ark Evolved, because in that there's, the species Anunnaki. And so those videos came up. So it was just, again, I don't buy into 90% of these conspiracies. But it's just kind of odd. And there was another one. I can't think of it. Maybe it was like Aruk or something, and it came up with a bunch of beer commercials and like beer production stuff. Like it was just so weird how anything really, in my opinion, that's really interesting historically, when you typed it in, it comes up with something completely modern and completely useless to the conversation of what you're trying to, or the concept or subject you're trying to dig into. Boy, I was annoyed by that. I thought it was fucking odd. Not that I think, Google is, how to put this, not to say that like Google is somehow doing, not COINTELPRO, but like they're controlling the narrative, they're making sure you don't see it and all this shit. Not to say that Google wouldn't do that. In fact, Google, what did they remove? They removed Mega Upload, or, Mega, Kim.com's, site, they removed that from Google searches. It won't even show up in Google searches anymore. So not that Google wouldn't do that, but I just found it strange. That's all I've got. I just thought it was kind of weird, and I'm curious if you experience anything like that too, to where like these these terms that are have to deal with very fascinating, say, historical subjects that could possibly speak to something going on today, perhaps. If it's just getting replaced by just dumb shit. I mean, Ark Evolved is a great game. I'm not saying that. It's just like that really shouldn't be the first thing to come up. And I was logged in without an account. So, this is definitely what was, what Google or what YouTube was raw dogging, shall we say, up to me. So yeah, I find it odd. I mean, it makes sense from a marketing perspective. If you're a marketer, yeah, grab some kind of historical name, and then by default, it's just going to show up in some people's searches, perhaps very intelligent people too. But yeah, anyway, I just thought it was odd. So just a quick something I noticed up there that I don't think I'm going to mention on a Cybertech Prime episode. But hey, I get to share my thought with you. So all right, let's get into some of these questions here. In fact, this one I really love, and it'll dovetail nicely with a question I wanted to get into last week during Q&A, but didn't get the chance to. And this question has a nice admixture of being both tech and entertainment, which are kind of my two of my major fortes. So I'll read it here. It says, well, it was part of a larger question or a bunch of questions being asked. So it starts off like this: unrelated thought / question, because it's unrelated to the previous ones, which are questions I'll get to in future episodes. It said, any thoughts on if / how smart tech could change the theater experience? Specifically, do you think there will be some kind of quote-unquote theater glasses that allow each person to have their own projection of the film in front of their face? Could you see smart car tech being used to allow a movie to be projected onto the front windshield of a car to completely change the drive-in movie experience? So there's a couple questions baked into that, but they're both very good ones, and it's definitely worth talking about. So the reality, I mean, there's going to be theory and speculation on my part, and then there's what's actually being developed at this time, to talk about this. Yeah, smart tech is definitely becoming a part of the movie-going experience. Now, one direction that it won't be, and this I think will actually speak to the larger subject of all this. Okay, one direction that it actually won't be a big deal is the smartphone. Now, I kind of feel like, was it AMC or Regal? One of those two was, they were actually going to, they were planning on allowing, in fact they did for a little while, and then I think they completely reneged on it. They were going to allow for texting in in the movie theater. So instead of where most movie theaters are like, please silence your phone, don't turn your phone on, and in fact, the ushers will come around, or whatever you want to call them, the workers there, will, if they see the light of your smartphone, they will ask you, please turn off your cell phone, or, please turn off the screen at least, whatever. And I mean, they quickly, whoever it was, AMC or Regal, they quickly backpedaled and said, "Oh no, we're not allowing that." But for a little while they did, and the reason I think they did is they were kind of gauging to see, is that okay? Can we make this work? How is this going to work in the theater? Let's start getting the metrics on that, because at some point we want to create the interactive experience. Now, this is my speculation. My thinking is, because I would think this, my thinking is that whatever the theater company was, that they want that you have a second screen in your pocket. Why wouldn't the movie theater want to take advantage of that? If anything, to push advertising on you or something. Like I could envision an idea where, like, before the movie starts, there would, you would download an app, say for the theater or something, and before the movie starts, they like put up some kind of code that you could type into your smartphone. And then that code would give you some kind of second screen experience with the movie you're watching, in sync with the movie that you're watching, which could be really cool, admittedly. I mean, I don't, I look at my cell phone screen sometimes when I'm in a movie theater, but I have a Screen Filter. In fact, that's the name of the app. What is it, by Hexon or something like that? It's an ancient app, but it still works so great. There's no reason not to use it. Ancient as in like 3 or 4 years old. That's ancient in app, in the app ecosystem. And that's for Android. But yeah, like I dim my screen like endlessly, and of course I automatically, I already set all of my apps to, if they have a dark theme, I set it for that. So really, there's no way you can really perceptibly see that my screen's on. That's the level of respect that I have for it. But I do certainly have it on because sometimes I like commenting during a movie or something like this, or just checking on things. And so, I could see maybe like something along those lines, and maybe even putting in the code and having the app on the phone could like automatically dim the screen to a certain degree. I mean, and when the lights come on, then the app will, allow the phone to get to full brightness or something like this. I mean, the idea that at, not just in theaters, but at conferences, they've already talked about this, how like for at Comic-Con, like say at San Diego Comic-Con or other various, nerd conventions, that they would be able to send out a signal, okay, like the show, the conference itself, the conference organizers, they could send out a signal that would actually keep cameras from working and microphones from working, on your phone if, say, you were going to see, like, the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 trailer or something, so nobody could record it and leak it online. Now, there's tremendous control and privacy issues with this. I mean, that are just horrific. I do not recommend that ability of completely losing like microphone and and camera capabilities of your phone without your choosing. And you could say, well, you don't have to go to the conference. Yeah, no shit. Okay, but again, the problem comes down to, okay, where else can this technology get used? Could it be used in places where there isn't a voluntary choice to be there, like a crime scene or something, where perhaps your life could be on the line, based around the use of a camera or microphone? Yeah, that's a real problem. So I mean, certainly you have those concerns around this sort of thing as well. But I could see movie theaters, going in that direction and using, doing some kind of trick like that. Now, that's not the direction they're going. It's not the direction they may ever go. What the direction they are going is that, and in fact, I think the first theater that allows for this has just recently kind of, or like they've just opened the section of the theater that allows for this. I don't know if any movie yet is really taking advantage of it. I know the new Avatar films are supposed to take advantage of this, and we talked about it on Sovereign Tech in the past. Is like at IMAX theaters, they are creating a specific room adjacent to the theater, to the actual theater number room that you're sitting in, that you can go into, say, before or after the movie, and it will be an entire augmented reality room where, yes, you would put in perhaps some kind of goggles or something like this. Maybe it's the same 3D glasses that you would get when you go to see the 3D movie at IMAX. And you would go in there and there would be this, AR experience where, say, you could be on the planet Pandora, or something like this. And that's actually a really clever idea. And I think it's a great, at the end of the day, I think it's a great way to get people to go to the theater. Is because they're going to get an experience there that, at least at the moment, they can't really get at home. Now, of course, it's just a matter of time before, you can put on VR glasses and, not AR, but actual VR glasses, and you could just experience that IMAX room, just as you would if you went to the IMAX theater. Of course, there might not be the direct shared experience where you could, like actually touch somebody. I mean, with VR, you could be wearing a full-on suit and you could get the sensations of touching people, but you get what I mean. You wouldn't be there in real life. Though, is there a difference once you turn into VR? Once you go fully on with VR, is it just like life itself? I mean, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. So I guess, since we're on the direction of the theater glasses, that was one of the questions, where each person has a projection of the film in front of their face. I could see that, but you see, then that gets into kind of what I was just talking about, to where even that experience that IMAX is doing, where there's a second room that you go into where you can have this AR, augmented reality experience. VR, like, just really eliminates, honestly, it eliminates the need to go somewhere. Unless it's like a situation where, you want to do dinner and a movie, and that's really what it's going to end up being. Like if you want to know, in my opinion, the future of theaters, and this is already a thing in some theaters. In fact, there's one in New Hampshire, in Manchester. I think it's called Chunky's or something. but it's a full on restaurant slash theater. Like, I mean, they have like airplane seats that you sit in the theater. Like, the theater has tables, the whole thing, and you can order food, and they actually have like gluten free food there too. It's nice. But I mean, a really really great experience, and that's really what you're going to need, because that's the thing VR can't exactly replace. At least now, I mean, we have a ton more technologies we have to develop before people are getting intravenously fed, through a VR suit or something, and they're acting like they're in the Matrix, and they're having steak, just because their mind is telling them, you're living it up, like what was his name, Cipher. uh, yeah. Anyway, that's I always thought. I always thought that the name Cipher was so clever for that character in the Matrix, because it's Lucifer, Louis Cipher, Cipher. Anyway, man, with the names I've almost chosen. So that that's really the direction that I see this sort of thing happening, is to where it's dinner and a movie. Now, interestingly, this is where the concept of theater glasses might really work very well. Is that you're wearing glasses and you're kind of hanging out in a restaurant and you're sort of interacting with everybody, maybe in an AR way or something like that, but you're getting food as well. But that's really, the golden meal ticket is to mix metaphors, that for theaters to stay relevant, I think they have to kind of become this restaurant model. Because otherwise, the experience, kind of these theater glasses that project the film in front of your face, like, how are you going to top that? I mean, that's one of the number one things that I want VR for. VR is one of the rare technologies that's being developed, still today, that excites me. And part of that is because I want to be able to pretend I'm in a theater in the 80s and I'm, going to see Rambo 2 or Rocky 4 or something like that, right? Or Rocky 3. And that would be so cool, But then once that happens, like, I really don't, I don't really need to go to the theater anymore. I need, I'll still want to go out to eat with friends, but you don't exactly have to go to the theater. So I don't know that I see that happening, and not that I wonder about this too, though, with the whole smart glasses thing. So in the 90s, when IMAX first came out, there were like two styles of IMAX. There was an IMAX that had very basic 3D glasses, kind of like what a lot of people are used to now. But then there was a very high-end IMAX, and I knew this because I grew up in New York. And I saw a very specific movie called L5 City in Space. There was an IMAX where, like, it was this huge headset. A headset that had speakers built into it. Okay, so they already did half the equation, where it's not just, it's not that the picture is being, projected to your face, but like the audio is very personal, to you. It was like this gray headset. You can look it up. In fact, look, if you go to like DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine, and if you type in Magic Johnson IMAX glasses, there's a classic picture of Magic Johnson and a couple other people, and they look ridiculous wearing these huge headsets. And if that was something that was already worked on, and and what it did was it allowed for this really really high end kind of IMAX 360 experience, and I think they've backed off from that. I haven't been to an IMAX theater in a while, so I'm not exactly sure. But in the 90s, this was going to be the new thing. I mean, it was a big deal. In fact, I remember it was even on they were advertising it on CNET Central. Again in the 90s, and I mean, it was really cool. I liked it. I actually thought it was awesome. This concept of putting on this huge headset. And you could still see through it. You could see around you, and all that. But it's just this massive headset. Like, I don't know. I thought that it was very futuristic, and I really liked it. But maybe people didn't like it, and maybe it didn't take off. And if people didn't like that, then maybe they wouldn't like to be wearing glasses, that projected something like directly in front of their face. But of course, the ability to do that is, and the slimness of the design of the glasses is certainly getting smaller all the time. And so maybe people wouldn't mind it. They just have to put on a pair of glasses, much like they do with 3D movies. But then I don't know that 3D movies take off, so I don't know. So for example, okay, like there's movies where it can be considered, and I use that term considered, a great movie, and then also at the same time it requires like 3D to be a great movie. The only movie I can think of like that can be considered a great movie and also like kind of requires 3D to really be appreciated and to really understand what was being done and presented is Avatar, of course. So that movie really paved the way for every theater getting into 3D. Like that's what brought on the 3D revolution again. But most people, I mean, a lot of the people I talk to, and that's kind of anecdotal, though I'm sure there's some degree of evidence, they don't care if it's 3D. In fact, a lot of times they don't want it. You know, they just don't give a shit if it's 3D or not. So yeah, I don't know how well this would sell to people as far as going to the theater and putting this stuff on overall. Doing it at home, I think people would see the value in that and maybe they do it. But as far as at the theater, yeah, I don't really see it. But it's interesting that Avatar is really going to, as far as I know, this is kind of that second IMAX room where there's that augmented reality room that I talked about. Avatar is going to be the first movie that does that, and it's interesting that movie series is really going to go down in history as being kind of a technological leap. Maybe, in fact, as far as movies that have done technological leaps, I think that maybe the top four would probably be Star Wars because Star Wars made space look real. Made the universe look a lot more real. Then I'd probably give a technical marvel. Well, I mean, you've got to give it to Jurassic Park for making the dinosaurs look real. I mean, that just made CGI, totally legit. But I'd give it to Tron as well, including Tron Legacy, because both of those movies, I mean, Tron definitely brought CGI to the forefront, even though it was Jurassic Park that made it, quote unquote, legitimate. But then Tron Legacy, with what they did with Jeff Bridges' character, with Clue, the character of Clue, which was supposed to represent Kevin Flynn in the digital realm, to where they made him look younger, and now that's been used for, in Rogue One for Tarkin and Leia. That's they definitely deserve a lot of credit for that. And then I think Avatar for taking 3D to its highest heights. But the question becomes, I mean, Avatar is one of the biggest money making movies of all time. The question becomes, is the problem that the 3D movies made otherwise, aside from Avatar, just like didn't pay that much attention to to crafting the 3D experience? Why hasn't that technology really taken off, especially at home? Is it because it's just an afterthought for a lot of other movies? That's my guess. Is that's what it's about? Is that because I get the case for making a 3D movie that needs to be in 3D. I think Avatar is in many ways boring without the 3D aspect of it. And I mean, everybody's has really dropped off from 3D. I mean, Nvidia, remember they were pushing their CUDA technology a few years ago? Or was that back in like 2010? And I mean, CUDA is still there, but they're not they're not schlepping around 3D glasses for Nvidia cards that much anymore. Yeah, so I don't know. It's going to. The future of films is definitely a very interesting thing, to pay attention to. I really do think that we're just going to get to the point where, you have VR glasses that create the theater experience, and for a lot of people, that's going to be good enough. Or they create another kind of experience entirely that maybe the up and coming generation, will want. So, I mean, another thing, too, understand that one of the big appeals to the theater, and maybe this will make it eternal, one of the big appeals to the theatrical experience isn't even the movie. It's that a lot of times parents will drop their kids off and kids can be alone for a little while at the theater. That was a huge appeal to the theater when I was growing up, was that I could be alone. I finally got some trust, because I'm a human being and I deserve it, especially as a kid. And so, maybe that'll never change to where, kids they're going to want to get dropped off at the mall, or they're going to want to get dropped off, at the movie theater, and just to enjoy that time kind of alone. And then and that's interesting because I think for a lot of people, they don't realize this, but their love for movies may literally come from their love for personal autonomy and freedom. Because they become intertwined, because the theater is kind of one of those rare places maybe where parents left you alone. Or I mean, maybe the parents went with you to see the movies. Who knows? And either way is fine. I'm just saying that I could see that as being a big aspect of that. Now, to the second part of the question, then I want to get into another question. Could you see smart car tech being used to allow a movie to be projected onto the front windshield of a car to completely change the drive-in movie experience? Now, this is interesting. So, I'll admit it, I never thought of it being used to simulate the drive-in experience. Again, VR could probably replicate a lot of this, and you could do a lot more interesting things in VR, like perhaps extramarital activities. but, um, but I never really thought about it for the drive-in. But I will say, and I've talked about this many times on Sovereign Tech, is that I really do think that Google's, AlphaGoog, Alphabet/Google, that AlphaGoog's interest in self-driving cars has been literally because they are concerned that there are parts of the day where you don't fucking see advertising. And that scares the shit out of their advertising, I should say, because they're not out there buying billboards really, that are on the side of the street. And so there's times where they're terrified that because advertising is still in many ways their bread and butter, and they're terrified that you're not seeing it. And so what can they do? Well, if they get your eyes during a commute time, be it because you're looking at your smartphone, or if you're looking at your entire windshield, with YouTube on it, well, then Google's gonna make money. And understand, I mean, I've predicted this many times, is that in a very few years, Google is not going to be a search company. Google will be best known for being YouTube. And before there was an Alphabet, before they created Larry Page created that parent company, YouTube was already spun off and being run by somebody other than Larry Page or Sundar Pichai. So I've always felt that that's because they know YouTube is a very special animal, and that they need to cater that and coddle that, in a very unique and special way from the rest of everything else that they do. But do understand that their self-driving cars, I think that at the end of the day, that is all of Google's interest in self-driving cars, is because they want to put a screen in front of your fucking face and advertisements, most importantly, at all times. Now, then why is Toyota doing self-driving cars? Or Ford doing self-driving cars, or GM? Because they want to put advertising in your face? No, not really. I think they're just terrified that if Google creates the self-driving car, which of course they're not making their own anymore now, they're just schlepping out the technology. But that if Google was making their own self-driving car, then they would be left in the dust, and their fear probably is that, look, everybody's going to get into a self-driving car. I don't agree with that, but whatever. Everybody's going to get into a self-driving car, and we need to be on top of this, or we're going to become extinct. We won't exist anymore. And so they're just doing it out of reaction, not because that's where they see things going, I think. So, yeah, I mean, as far as doing it the drive-in, sure, I could see that sort of thing happening, and I mean, it'd be great if you could do kind of an interesting 3D experience, or not 3D, but immersive experience, where it could be on multiple windshields on the car, right? And maybe it could black out from other people looking into your car. Wouldn't that be great? That could get interesting. Like that. I could see some nice use cases. I don't think it'd be enough for what it would cost to actually implement that technology. I don't think it'd be worth it. But I mean, it could be fun to, within a car. You could park anywhere. You could park on Love Mountain and put on a movie on all the screens, and then get stooping and rock your shit out or whatever while you're watching a flick. I don't know. That could be very interesting, but that's so cost prohibitive to do just for that. And I'm more of a mental guy anyway. If I'm gonna park a car somewhere and get it on, I'm gonna be getting it on. I'm not watching a fucking movie. But I guess that's just me. Yeah. So I mean, that's an interesting idea. That might become something. Or maybe what'll happen is that like somebody will build like a drive-in theater with just the cars there. You're not pulling up into your own car, and then somebody will make simulators. I mean, yeah, it's a fascinating concept to think about. But definitely, I mean, without a question, the windshield of your car in the self-driving car world that we may end up in is going to become prime real estate for all kinds of companies. They are going to want that. Bees to honey. It's going to be crazy. So anyway, I love those questions. I love talking about the entertainment industry because I think we're in for some pretty heavy changes in the very, very short term. That are going to change a lot of how we experience this stuff. And I'm not necessarily saying it's all good, nor am I saying it's all bad. But we're in for some heavy duty changes, and I think a lot of companies know it because they're I haven't done the CES special yet. I'm going to be recording that here soon and maybe releasing that this week. But when you look at CES, I think you're seeing just how much a lot of like TV companies and others are just sweating because they know it's coming. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Industrial espionage and industrial what's the term I'm looking for? Like kind of industrial warfare is really a thing. I mean, like people, really get. Well, there's companies, and you don't hear about it much, but they really do this sort of thing. I wouldn't be surprised if, like television manufacturers, especially in the 90s, if they were the ones that were holding back a lot of the development. And you can hold back by buying out companies or whatever, but that they were holding back a lot of the development of virtual reality because they were terrified that virtual reality was going to, make the television meaningless. I mean, and then it's not just television companies. I mean, there's content production companies, all kinds of things that are so largely invested in that platform that, I could see them scrambling. It's like, okay, we got to stop VR somehow. And now they can't really stop it because now you have companies like Nvidia and some others that they want to be. They know that they have the horsepower. They have the luck of building the kind of the infrastructure, like CPUs and GPUs and all that would really power these experiences, and they can just ignore. And they're powerful enough that they can ignore the shit out of all these TV manufacturers and cable companies, whatever else. So yeah, well, anyway, that's a lot of speculation, but there you have it. So I hope that answered that question. Great thoughts though, as far as how all that could end up shaping up. So let's see. All right, but maybe we can do this one other question. This is one I was going to do last week, but I bumped it to this week. And the question was effectively, I'll try and keep this under an hour. Was effectively like, is there a dream movie that I would love to edit? Actually, it was more about fan edits was the question. And I know I have some listeners that are very interested in fan edits. I don't know if they're the ones that asked me this question, but fan edits, just in brief, fan edits are the idea. Perhaps the most popular would be for Episode 1 of Star Wars, for The Phantom Menace. In fact, there's one called The Phantom Edit that's been around for probably a decade, if not longer, where somebody, cut out all of the scenes with Jar Jar Binks and made some other changes and all this. Some of which I've talked about in the past when talking about Star Wars that I think were actually really nice. Not that I say you need to cut out Jar Jar, not that I have any love for Jar Jar. Definitely the worst thing in Star Wars. I really don't debate that for a second. But I also respect George Lucas as a creator and the creative, just as I'd want people to respect me. So, but like they did, for example, one of the things I really liked is that in Episode 1 with the Nemodians, and they did it with the other movies in the prequel trilogy as well, when the Nemodians would talk, instead of them sounding like some kind of stereotypical, East Asian, they changed it to where it sounded like almost like a mechanical noise, and then they would have the subtitles go across, and it was cool how they did the subtitles. The subtitles would go across as an alien language first, and then they would morph into English so that you could see what they were saying. But you had, they were forced subtitles. Not the first movie to do that. I think the first movie to ever do that, where like at first it was a different language and then it morphed into English, was probably Wing Commander from, was it 97 or 98? One of my favorite movies of all time. Certainly one of my favorite game series. But for the Kilrathi, it did that in the film, and I thought that was a really clever trick. And so they did that with Episode 1, which is, not a bad idea at all. So, and there's other, like Prometheus is another one that gets fan edited a lot, where they try to tighten it up, and, effectively your run-of-the-mill fan with, modern, desktop technology, computer desktop technology, can really become their own director, or at least editor. Kind of a director too, but at the very least an editor, and do some amazing things. And I think it's really awesome. I don't really care for much of them, and most of the time I really want to respect what the director's doing. There's times where I don't exactly feel that way. Like Dune. Here's a very famous fan edit for you, and one of my favorites. There's what's called the Spice Driver version of Dune, where they took like all the deleted scenes. They just took every scene that they could fucking gather of Dune, and they made this one, like 3.5 hour opus of, David Lynch's Dune from '84. Now, David Lynch pretty much walked off the set of that film. I mean, like he was very frustrated with how it was working out. So in that case, well, the director, who's not exactly the creator either, right? Frank Herbert is, I guess, ultimately, but the director was just like, yeah, nah, I'm done with this shit. And so then, yeah, let the fans at it. Effectively open source. I mean, that's the kind of the creator's permission. Not that you need the permission, but that's their permission to, yeah, okay, open source it and let's do these fan edits. So it's really cool. I mean, and there's great software that allows you to do it. You got to rip the DVD or the Blu-ray or something, and then you use editing software like Handbrake or something like that, and you just go to town. And I think that's just wonderful. Again, there's times where I don't care to see that sort of thing, and then there's other times. I mean, especially when it's about adding in scenes that were already filmed. Like I love that. Like I'd love to see a version of Star Trek Nemesis, and I'm sure it's out there. A version of Star Trek Nemesis where all of the deleted scenes are put back in, like where you get to see Wesley and a lot of the other stuff. One of the fan edits that I always wanted to see, and this is so the question is what is there a dream movie that I would fan edit? I have an answer to this. This is not the answer, but I'm going to describe it. I mean, this is one thing that had been talked about probably about maybe 15 years ago or so, and maybe it'll still happen with a lot of the technologies that exist now. There was a lot of talk about putting in with Star Trek the motion picture. So they did do a director's cut about a decade ago, and Rob Wise was there, and he was a big part of it. And they added in a bunch of different effects, like they made Vulcan look a lot more fleshed out. They did all this wild stuff, and it's really really good. And I'm always disappointed that version's never gone to Blu-ray. Like we've never gotten a 1080p version of Star Trek the motion picture, the director's cut. But there was conversation at the time with the motion picture that they would take the storyboards and a lot of the concept art for that film, of which there is a lot, and they would turn it into, I mean, it's already like a 2 hour and change film, and they would turn it into like almost a 4 hour, masterpiece. And that they would get the actors to reread their lines, to do the dialogue, or not reread, but to read, cut dialogue from the movies, and cut scenes from the script and everything, and sort of have it be this mishmash of action, live action and storyboard. And I thought that was a tremendous idea, because that movie is so grand in scope. I think it would have worked. I think you could get away with just like showing concept art in parts of that film. I think another one you could kind of do that with is 2001. In fact, looking at the concept art for 2001, Kubrick's 2001, I think is essential to understanding exactly what is going on, like particularly during the Stargate sequence and some other things. So I would have loved to have seen that, and I wouldn't mind if somebody did that now. Like, by all fucking means, add on as many hours as you want to Star Trek the Motion Picture. I am all for that. So anyway, that's not my answer, but that's one that I would love to see, certainly. And actually, I'd love to see that being done professionally. But the movie that I actually really, if I could do a fan edit, and I'd want to be totally in charge, because I think I'm the only one that cares, and I think I'm the only one that could do it right. That would be, this is going to shock you, it would be 1998's Lost in Space. I love that movie. I enjoyed, the original Lost in Space. Obviously, I wasn't alive when it first aired, but, I'd watch it on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I just, the first season especially was really good because it was a lot more serious, but even when it got hokey, I didn't mind that either. But I loved the 98 Lost in Space. This is the one with Gary Oldman and, Joey, right, and William Hurt and Mimi Rogers, Heather Graham. The dark turn and the more serious turn that they were going for with it. Now, it did still kind of end up as a little more of a kid's movie, unfortunately, and some of the dialogue was admittedly dry. But there are full deleted scenes that get into more explanation of what the movie's about. So I would reinsert those deleted scenes so that the movie makes a lot more sense and you get a little more backstory. But I would do that again. I love that movie. I think it's so cool. I really wish we got the sequel. But especially with how the B9 robot ended up looking. I mean, it was just a lot of possibilities with that film. So I would do that. Then I would probably like I would, so there's a novelization for the movie. In fact, the novelization, when you read that for the 98 Lost in Space, you definitely get the greater sense of like how dark that movie was supposed to be and how serious that movie was kind of supposed to be. And so I would take a lot of the, like I would do an opening text, not like an opening crawl like Star Wars, but an opening kind of monologue, or not monologue, maybe a monologue. Maybe I'd have someone speak it, kind of like Sean Connery does in the beginning of Highlander. But I would have an opening kind of dialogue explaining more of what's going on. I mean, you get in the movie originally, you get William Hurt, as Dr. Robinson, kind of laying it out of what's going on, where they're taking on was the global sedition, whatever, and they're trying to get to the Alpha Planet and all that. I would include like a lot more opening text explaining what's going on because the novel really gives you that. And I'd love to add in some sequences like when they're freezing and kind of when they're putting on like uh, the space suits effectively that they wear in that, which were really well thought out. Again, especially when you read the novel, you understand how much technology and like how deeply they were thinking through how a lot of this stuff works. I would put in like kind of computer simulations of what's going on to their bodies when they do that. Like you would show kind of like a line not diagram. Like a schematic of sorts, kind of like a vector graphic schematic that would show what's happening when they put on the suit and all this. I would add that. I would also probably what I would do is I would take a scene like a shower scene from one of Mimi Rogers' other movies because Mimi Rogers, I mean, first off, she's just gorgeous. Tom Cruise's first wife, actually. Obviously not anymore, but I mean, she's just a stunning woman. And even as she got older, she was still stunning. What was she in that movie or in that show? Was she in Nip Tuck? I think she was in Nip Tuck. It was either Nip Tuck or Californication. Anyway, I would take a shot of her, a shower scene of her. I'd put in a nude scene effectively into Lost in Space. I would get a shower scene of her, tits and all, and I would inject that, somewhere into the film. And maybe even grab some dialogue from some other parts where she could be talking a little more sexy perhaps, and get in that get it back to that darker, more adult oriented kind of film, and I think that would be really cool. So I mean those are just a few of the things I'd do with a fan edit like that. I'd probably make a little more if I could if the fan edit also allowed me to say mimic the special effects of the time and like actually add in new CGI and all that. Probably have not space battle, but a lot more space scenes. Like I would make it a lot more. I would go for shots that. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Make their travel through space a little more cerebral. You get what I'm saying? Like make it a little more epic, kind of like 2001 or 2010, which talk about another great movie, or Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where there's these grand scenes where there's a lot of music and they're just kind of traveling through space. Because Bruce Broughton, who did the score. That's one of the greatest, in my opinion, it's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. In fact, not only a great soundtrack with the score, with the instrumentals, but a great soundtrack with like the electronic music and the, kind of the EDM and everything that they that came with the original version of the soundtrack. And then Entrada, of course, like 12, 13 years later, or maybe it was like 15 years later, they came out with that 2-disc set that was the complete score by Bruce Broughton, which it's amazing to me. Bruce Broughton scored that film. We talked about when we were talking about Star Wars in recently on the Sovereign Tech Prime when I did the review of Rogue One, and I said it's crazy how good a job Michael Giacchino did in 4 weeks, because he had 4 weeks to completely rescore that film. Bruce Broughton scored Lost in Space in 2 weeks. I had no idea. I didn't know that until I read the liner notes of the 2-disc Entrada, complete score. Incredible. Because it's such a great score. Like the themes, everything kind of sticks with you. It's sort of that perfect 90s sci-fi soundtrack. And yeah, like I would want to use more of those cues. I want to use more of that music, and you could do that. Or even add in some other EDM if you want. You could do that if you kind of expanded some of the space scenes and everything and had some really good, I think you could easily mimic the CGI of the Jupiter 2, and if you just downloaded, a 3D model of it, you'd be in great shape. From the 98 Lost in Space movie. So that's that's the direction I would go. And that's really kind of the dream movie that I would love to do that to. I'd love to take that movie to its heights. Maybe the other choice, so if I was to have a top three, Star Trek the Motion Picture would be there. I would do that. I mean, there's already a ton of deleted scenes for that get there's like 4 different versions of that movie. It's almost as bad as Blade Runner. Blade Runner is a great movie. I'm just saying as bad as in how many versions there are. There's so many versions of Star Trek the Motion Picture already. There's the VHS version. There's the version that aired on NBC. There's the version that was in theaters. There's a director's cut. There's so many. I would probably do that and just add in all those other scenes. Nemesis would be a good choice too, like I said. But the other one would probably be the aforementioned Wing Commander. There is so much in that. There's whole other storylines, and that there were film scenes that were not in it. I would try to hunt down those scenes, or I'd maybe pull that storyboard trick or something. Because there's that whole subplot in the Wing Commander movie where the guy who's in charge of the Pegasus station at the beginning of the movie, you find out that and this isn't a spoiler alert because you don't know it in the film, because they cut out the entire kind of sub storyline. You find out that he's that he's a pilgrim and he's actually working with the Kilrathi, and that the pilgrims are working with the Kilrathi. There's this whole other, and you can read it all in the novel for the Wing Commander movie by Peter Tellep. Was that Peter Tellep or Peter David that did that? Peter Tellep did the other two. I think Peter Tellep did the first book too. Anyway, I would definitely make a fan edit of that for a bunch of reasons, and I would actually probably grab some scenes from Deep Blue Sea to show off what's her name, Sophie. Damn, I can't remember the female lead in that. That's terrible. I can't remember her name, but I'd sexy it up too. So those would be my top three that I would fan edit. And we're at the hour mark now, so I think that's enough Q&A for this week. Like I said, in the next couple weeks, we'll do that big religio history Q&A, and then either one of those, I'm sure we'll have another great Q&A in there. You get them every Wednesday, baby. I'm always here for you. So no matter where I am. So anyway, enough of that. You had an earlier episode when I was on the Tatiana show get released earlier today. I hope you enjoyed that. And there's going to be more content coming out this week as well. And then, of course, we'll have a very special, I think, Sex and Science Hour this week. And, of course, we'll have episode 209 of Sovereign Tech. So, that's enough for me. I'll see you on the other side. And thank you so much. I know I got a ton of new patrons this week. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. You really help all this go round and round. You make it happen. You contribute. It's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you to the patrons that have been here for a few months now. Love you. And I mean you. All right. See you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.